Next on News Talk, AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show with Kevin Doran.
Okay, we're here on the Newsmaker Show on this Wednesday. Congressman Tom Reed, who's in the nation's capital. Tom, first of all, I want to ask you about some of your ads that I watched during the campaign, and I think a statement you made afterward about your efforts to bring industry into your district and Western New York in general. Now, I've always wondered, what can a congressman really do to bring in jobs? Isn't that something that each individual community has to do? And also, a state that is very anti-business, contrary to what some people in Albany would have you believe. What can you do to overcome that, Tom?
Well, I think at the federal level, when we talk about our broken tax policy, for example, we have a tax code that's broken. Being on the Ways and Means Committee, the committee that writes the tax code for America, if we can simplify the code, make it competitive, and make it fair, that allows private enterprise, the private market, to flourish, or at least have an opportunity to have that bag that's saddled on their backs that the broken tax code represents. But on top of that, I mean, we could have things with infrastructure investment to make sure that we have the roads, water, and sewer lines so that the private sector can flourish and have an opportunity to succeed. But I agree with you. Fundamentally, this is going to boil down to the local level, to the state needing to change its business climate and its business policies that's driving manufacturers and businesses out of the state. But we can do things on the federal level to make sure that any federal barriers are removed.
Okay, so now let's move on to something that is somewhat related to that, and that is the whole business of bringing American business back. Guys and companies that moved offshore because of the bad tax policy in this country. In the last election cycle, the presidential election cycle, I remember Rick Santorum had a plan to forgive them something or other so they would come back home. You know, I'm a simple guy, Tom Reed, but it seems to me that we should do everything we can to have those people who outsourced come back. What's the holdup?
Well, I think the holdup is the lack of a bargaining partner in the White House to come to the table to fix our tax code, which is creating an environment where these companies are settled overseas with their earnings being trapped there. And if we fix the code on a permanent basis, and that's where maybe I disagree with Rick Santorum talking about a holiday. Some people support that, and I believe Rick Santorum may be one who supports a holiday relief period. You have to make these reforms permanent because in order to plan and make capital investments, say for a new manufacturing facility, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. You need the reliability of a permanent code that's competitive, in my humble opinion, that will bring those jobs back here to America's soil and create an environment where we embrace the private sector and not chastise it or adopt policies that punish it.
Okay, in January, Republicans take control of both the Senate and the House, so there won't be a Harry Reid to block all your ideas in the House, and maybe you can go forward. But then you got a guy in the White House that will certainly veto most of those things. Am I right?
I hope not. I hope the president learns a lesson. I'm the eternal optimist, Kevin. You know that.
I know you've said that, but I wonder how long that's going to keep going. All right, go ahead.
It's going to keep going as long as I'm breathing, I'll tell you that. That's how my mom raised me, and that's how I will always be. But at the end of the day, I hope the president takes a lesson out of Bill Clinton's page of history. You know, where Bill Clinton reached out and worked with Newt Gingrich to come up with welfare reform. That is a historic reform that a strong Republican and a strong Democrat came to the table and implemented some reforms that benefited the American people. I hope the president learns that lesson, just as Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did in the 80s when it came to comprehensive tax reform and immigration reform. That is how we can move the ball forward, and I hope the president learns that lesson of history, but obviously him taking unilateral action here recently on immigration does not bode well for him learning that lesson yet, but we're going to keep reminding him every day we're in office.
All right, we'll talk now about immigration with Congressman Tom Reed. By the way, your district is from Chautauqua to Tompkins County?
It is. It's 11 counties, about the size of the state of New Jersey, going across the southern tier and then up through the middle of central New York.
It's a very, very big district, and as you say, is the state of New Jersey, probably Rhode Island, and a few others along the way. Let's talk just a little bit about President Obama and the prospects of cooperation. Boy, I don't know why you'd be optimistic. Nothing the man has said so far indicates that he's going to change one iota. Have you seen something that would go contrary to what I just said?
Well, obviously, no. I can't disagree with what you're saying, but I hope he will learn that lesson, and we're going to continue to put pressure on him and the American people. I think there's one thing that drives this president above everything else, and that is his ego and how the history books are going to judge him. And I think what's happening now is I hope the president is seeing that his ego is causing him to potentially engage in the process, because the history books are not going to be kind on him. And once he sees that, then I think he will move, and he will try to rehabilitate himself with things like tax reform, potentially immigration reform on our terms, and things that need to be done for the American people and creating jobs of today and tomorrow.
I want to get off the track a bit on immigration. It was pointed out throughout this tumultuous week in which he went ahead and did things he said he was going to do, if you guys in Congress didn't see it his way. What real difference is there? We weren't deporting illegal immigrants. Their kids were staying here with their parents. What's the difference? I mean, I know the difference, but what, in your view, what's the big difference between him saying, okay, I'm going to do it through edict, or you people passing a law, which I think you're about to do anyway, weren't you?
Yeah, we're working on it. Obviously, the top priority is the jobs and the economy of America's future. But immigration is broken in America and needs to be fixed, and I'm part of putting forward solutions. And so we're working on it, and I think we're making progress in it.
What would you do if you were in charge of the whole thing?
Well, first, if I were the president on this issue, I would engage Congress, and I would engage in the legislative process, which this president does not do. And I don't know if he's capable of doing it. And he needs to learn that lesson and engage in the process and sit down with the members of the House and the Senate and say, okay, let's have these negotiations and understand that it's not going to be a bill that is his policy 100% of the way. And that's what he's been doing historically. It's my way or the highway type of approach. And even when he recognizes 22 times that he doesn't have the constitutional authority to do what he does, and then he flip-flops and does it, as the Washington Post said, that's a real problem. And what I would do is I would engage in that legislative process and come up with solutions by starting with the border first to secure it. Don't grant amnesty for those who violated the law as adults, and then move forward on the issues one by one and deal with our farmers and our higher educational institutions that really have a need on top of the other issues that we're dealing with.
Tom Reed, we're going to take a break. We're talking with Congressman Tom Reed, and we'll be back in just a moment. Talking about a wide range of issues with Congressman Tom Reed, our congressman, Republican, as you know, just overwhelmingly reelected. And that must have felt pretty good, huh?
It was a good night. It definitely was. And
now,
hats off to all the volunteers that made it happen.
I guess we can't let a show go by without talking about Ferguson, Missouri. Whoever heard of Ferguson, Missouri, by the way? But suddenly now it's become the center of all news coverage. Some of it accurate, some of it terribly inaccurate. But nevertheless, it's the number one story. What's your view on what's been taking place and what could have been done differently?
Well, obviously, I don't condone the rioting and the unlawfulness that we're seeing on the streets of Ferguson as a result of this grand jury decision. I am a true believer in the rule of law, and the grand jury weighed the evidence, came to a conclusion, and issued its decision. And to take to the streets, to me, is the wrong way. What I would hope people would do is the issue of race division needs to be confronted in an open, transparent way. Sit down as leaders from faith-based areas, from community leaders, from individual point of view, and work on the issue the hard way, not by destroying property or, God forbid, taking lives.
Well, I don't think the president, I don't think it was his finest moment Monday night when he got on TV and gave a speech that both sides could have applauded. First of all, what's the President of the United States doing in a case like Ferguson? That's not his province. Am I wrong?
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously, weighing in and setting a tone is something I don't disagree with, but not to fan the flames, not to think that a speech is going to cure this issue. This is going to take real work because we make great strides on our racial division in America and improving race relations, but there's more work to be done. And the way you deal with it is openly and transparently, and not by thinking that a speech is going to somehow take care of the problem.
Well, the problem a lot of people saw with the speech was both sides could have applauded it, rather than simply saying you can't go to the streets, period. Let's leave it at that. Instead, he gave all kinds of encouragement, in my humble opinion, to people who were going to go out in the streets and do the wrong thing. Because he said, you've got to listen to them, too. Why do you have to listen to them? They're breaking the law.
Exactly, and that's where I think the president, by taking that front role in this situation, did disservice in the sense of trying to creating a situation that fanned those flames. So I would agree with your sentiment and comments, but at the end of the day, I do appreciate the tone of saying, we cannot go to the streets and we should not go to the streets, and I hope the president reinforces that message going forward.
Chuck Hagel, what's your view on all that?
That really caught us all by surprise. I did not see that coming. Nobody that I've talked to in the House or the Senate that we had discussions on ever raised the issue of Hagel's potential forced resignation that we saw. I think the president is showing that his lack of experience in managing offices, managing people, is coming through. And this is yet the most recent example of it. And hopefully we get a replacement that is a solid member of the defense arena that has a defense background, because the issues that we're dealing with on the foreign geopolitical spectrum are complex and significant, and it's not time for timidity. It's time to lead.
Well, some people are saying, and I think there's a good reason, there's evidence there, that Hagel did not think we were doing the right thing with ISIS, and he got off the Obama boat when he said, these guys are the most dangerous thing we've ever seen, and of course Obama doesn't want him to say that. But then it's been pointed out that he's fired absolutely every general that he's had under his command who disagreed with him. Should that be the case?
No, and I think it's a sign of the president's philosophy that if he gives a speech, that if he just somehow has that moment where he talks to the world, that all of a sudden everyone's going to sit down and sing Kumbaya. I'm a firm believer of the philosophy, peace through strength. And hopefully the next Secretary of Defense adopts that policy, and the President recognizes that's what we need. We need strong leadership. We need strength in order to bring the peace back to the Middle East and elsewhere.
All right, now here's a question regarding Holder. Eric Holder resigned, and I don't know why people didn't pick up on this. Of course he resigned. He saw that the Senate was going to go Republican, and the Democrats were going to lose the Senate. And he knew that he was then in line for real problems with that contempt of Congress that was passed by the House. Why people didn't pick up on that, I don't know. But what about this new gal? What do you know about her?
Well, I don't know much about her. She's from New York, my understanding, comes out of the Justice Department, U.S. Attorney. Don't know much about her track record, but at the end of the day, we still got to deal with Eric Holder until that appointment occurs. And with the president enacting with the immigration situation, I think the sentiment in the Senate is, okay, let's just go forward and continue to hold Holder accountable as the Attorney General. And I think you may see that break down in the Senate, her nomination, to send this message to the president that he can't unilaterally run this country without participation from Congress.
Congressman Tom Reed, our time is about gone. What else is happening in Washington that we, the average person in the street, is not paying much attention to, but should?
Well, we're working on this tax extender bill, which is these provisions of the tax code that are on temporary basis. I'm trying to make as many of those permanent as possible. Things like research and development, Section 179 deduction for small businesses and individuals and their business operations. Those are real cornerstone pieces of legislation that are going to bring jobs and create jobs here in America. And hopefully we can get those done permanently. Stay tuned, but we're making a lot of headway, and I hope to announce an agreement here shortly.
Very good. Well, one final question, and that deals with where we started on jobs. Throughout the campaign, I don't think we ever saw an ad for any Republican that wasn't followed by an ad from the state of New York, which costs millions and millions of dollars, telling how Governor Cuomo has been able to bring all these jobs to New York through, what's the name of the program he's got there? No tax.
Startup New York?
Startup New York, that's it. Has that really happened? Have they really brought that many jobs in?
You know, I question those numbers because New York State has a long way to go, in my humble opinion, as to how we create an environment that's pro-business, pro-private sector, so that we can create jobs in the private sector and really make things here to sell them there. And you know, if the governor wants to remove tax and regulation burdens in order to unleash that private sector entrepreneurialism, I'm all in. And what I would start with, though, rather than focusing on as much of the new people trying to bring to the state, stand with the people that made the investments over time, that have stayed here in New York and shown that they can compete in an environment in New York State that's not business friendly. To me, those should be the priorities. Those are our fellow residents. Those are our friends. Those are our neighbors. Those are our family members. That's who we should be standing with.
Congressman Reed, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thanks, Kevin. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and please get out and weigh in on St. James. It's so important that we engage in that process.
Well, you'll be happy to know that a group of doctors have now joined the battle with an extensive advertising campaign, urging people to sign the petition. But as I often point out, I think the real test for saving St. James will be with our Mayor, Sean Hogan, because he's the only Democrat who can get in to see Cuomo, who is the only guy that can really make the difference. Am I right about that?
Well, he's definitely a critical piece, but it's going to really take the community and all of us coming together, Republican, Democrat, standing firm, and that's what we plan on doing. And Sean is obviously the point person, and we'll stand with him, and because it's so important that we keep St. James and the services it provides.
Thank you, Congressman Tom Reed.
Thanks so much, Kevin.